it's I mean, if you just dropped me into a random country that was at war into that war zone and I had no preparation, I would not be as calm
Yeah.
as these places I go.
So what does scare you? What are your biggest fears?
um, it's interesting. I have a friend who works he did a lot of work when the Ebola outbreak was happening, the major one several years ago, and that stuff really scares me. I guess I'm like not I'm like a low key or sort of minimal like germaphobe a little bit. I just try and wash my hands just because I think it keeps me healthy. It's not like debilitating. But that stuff really scares me because you can't see it. And so I asked my colleague's wife, who's also a good friend of mine, if she was nervous that he was going to these places, and her takeaway was that it's much less scary than a man with a gun because a man with a gun can just decide to shoot you, whereas Ebola you can wear all the right suits and you can wash yourself. And I almost still don't agree with her. Like I just think you can talk yourself out. You can't reason with Ebola. But I see her point, and so that's something I've never really like gone too far down the route of thinking about covering as these diseases, like these super infectious diseases. I also did a report on Ebola when I was at CFS, and that scared me pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, so those sorts of things scare me. Um, and I mean, gunfire is not fun to be around. It's not like uh, in those situations it's very serious, and it makes me nervous. But also big crowds, just it's like a big crowd can kind of, if they all decide to start moving one way. I was in it was completely fine, but I was in Croatia on the Slovenian border, and there was a big group of refugees, and they were being let through very slowly, and I wanted to make a picture to show the scale of the crowd, so I was in between them and this fence, and I just like I had to get out of there pretty quick because I was just worried about getting crushed a little bit if people started to panic or that sort of thing. So I don't know, big groups.
Okay, so aside for situational fears,
Mm-hmm.
are there just situations in life where you feel fear or stress or I don't know, like what are your low moments and how do you get through those?
Um, I guess I don't know if this is exactly relevant, but we were talking the other day. I sort of easy in those high stress moments to make a quick decision because you kind of have to. And I find when I'm at home trying to decide what to do, or what story to cover, or even what I should do with my day, I sort of feel myself being pulled in a lot of directions and find that, and then I get stressed about that, and then I get frustrated, and I was speaking because there's there's some certain politicians in U.S. politics these days who seem very sure of themselves, and I find that infuriating. But also I'm like slightly jealous, just because I've never known anything with such certainty as these people seem to.
Right.
So I guess that's not really a fear, but it's something I struggle with, and I wish I had some more conviction sometimes because I sometimes am researching stories. I'm like, I could go there. I could go to Iraq. I could go to Africa. I want to learn more about this thing, and that I find stressful.
Yeah, these are major
Yeah,
diverging paths you could take.
yeah.
So how do you get through it? Like, what do you do to get out of that tangled mess?
I don't know. I try and I'm trying to set a better routine for myself because that's obviously it's easy to, as a freelancer, we have all this freedom of like you don't have to be in an office at 9 a.m. and you don't have to be at a certain meeting at a certain time necessarily, and you could take a whole day and do nothing if you wanted. So I'm trying to fight that by setting specific routines, and to try and like set my goals out each week and to try and really get that stuff done. Um, the covering, deciding what topic to cover sometimes comes down to what who's interested in it in terms of clients, and who wants to buy the story, if someone will commit to it. But other times, like So in January, I was sent to Morocco for a story, and that was like I'd never been to Africa before. That was a really good story for me. And then and I was like, all right, like this year's going to be great. And then February and March were dead. There was nothing. So in April, I bought a ticket and went to Georgia because I like Georgia, the country, not the state. Because there was a story I'd been thinking about doing there for a while, and I kind of pitched it around, but I wasn't even sure it would work out. So I just went, did that, and that was like a good revitalizing thing. I think I have a propensity. So I feel like I live a fairly frugal lifestyle, and part of that's just who I am, and part of that is sort of dictated by my job. But I think I have also a propensity to try and I'm like, I haven't worked in a while. I'm going to stay inside. I'm just going to eat cereal and drink my own coffee, and I won't spend $1 and that's just not realistic. And both on that micro level, but also on the all right, nothing's happened, so I'm going to go self-fund a story that I would like to do. I'm going to go to Georgia and do this project I've wanted to do. And it's something I scribbled in my journal the other day. In economics, there's this concept called the shutdown condition, which is when your factory is there's not enough supply to support the cost of paying everybody to come to work and make the stuff, so you shut down your factory until supply comes back up or whatever. And I just don't think the shutdown condition applies to freelance journalism. You can't cloister yourself and not be out there in the world making stuff, even if no one is paying you in that moment to make the stuff.
Looking ahead, do you have any big dreams or pivots or aspirations that you could see for yourself or that you want?
That's a good question. At the moment, I'm just trying to, I guess I'm kind of chasing that idea of stability to a degree, which I don't even know if it exists. But trying, I guess, not actually trying to chase objective stability, but to get to a point where I feel stable, which is, I think, an important distinction. I'd like to see more of Africa. Like I said, I went to Morocco for the first time, but well, there's a lot of people who kind of consider that different than the rest of Africa, and which is, I mean, Africa is a wildly diverse place as far as I know. So I'd like to get further south. Basically, I have a bunch of colleagues in Kenya who I've been meaning to go see, and I'd like to go down there and find some stories to work on. I haven't been to a proper conflict since 2016, and that I'm sort of itching to do that again. And I hesitate to say it that way. It's not sort of like an adrenaline junkie thing or anything like that, but it's just something I feel it's something I feel like I am comfortable with. Like you mentioned earlier in our interview that a lot of people would, I think it was more in the context of the instability of freelancing, but a lot of people would be uncomfortable with that, whereas I feel tense where I know what's going to happen in the next moment. And so I think I sort of almost have a duty to take advantage of the fact that I don't mind going to these places, and I think the stories that you can tell in these places are vitally important for humanity to know about. So that's, I think, sort of the short-term future, at least. I would like to go back, but one of the reasons I haven't gone back is I haven't found one that feels sort of right. In terms of, I still really love Ukraine as a country. I really cherish my time spent there. But you can still go and take photos of people shooting at each other, but it's really like a war of attrition at this point, and it doesn't feel worth sort of putting myself in danger to tell that story at this moment. It's tragic, and I wish there weren't people who were there fighting, because I think all death is tragic. But it doesn't feel something I really want to go do at this moment. I'm working on other stories in Ukraine, but not on the front line.
It's interesting. There's this dynamic to your life of conflict matchmaking. Like, which tragic conflict in the world is right for you?
Yeah,
I can-
yeah. That's
And it has to fit. Like, you have to
right.
want to get in there and tell that story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, I think you have to assess. It can't be too dangerous, right? I mean, when I was deciding to become a freelancer, when I had the opportunity, basically the two things that were going on was Syria and Ukraine, and I chose pretty deliberately not to go to Syria. Like it wasn't like a 50-50 coin toss. I just felt like it was very dangerous. I don't have like the Middle East experience in terms of just my background, what my knowledge is of. So that was one of the reasons I chose not to go there. There's still obviously interesting things to do in Syria. I have many colleagues there, and down the road I might look at that. But matchmaking is a funny way to put it. But I think it is like a risk assessment thing, and also just where my passions lie and the stories I want to tell. I don't want to go. I mean, you don't want to go into a dangerous place feeling like, I hope I'm interested in this. You
got to be all in.
Yeah, you got to be all in.
Do you feel the influence of your long CFS career come in?
I think a little bit. I mean, well, actually, I think a lot. I'd say I identify more in terms of educational institutions. I went to CFS, and then I went to Ohio University for 2 years, and then I finished at Duke University. And I actually feel sort of the strongest attachment to Friends School. Part of that's a function of being very briefly, I wasn't at 4 years at an institution, whereas I was here for 12 years, I guess. So part of it's just purely a function of that, but I was given such freedom to explore my interests here, and just, I don't know, made some lifelong friends, made more friends here than I made in college. I made a few friends in college, but just identified with this place very deeply, and so it's almost hard for me to point to one thing and say, oh, that's what I took away from CFS, just because I feel like it was such an immersive experience and such a formative experience here.
Yeah, I've almost felt like there's this disproportional influence of this place. Like I went here for 6 years, and obviously as I get older, that becomes a smaller percentage of my life. But I feel like as I get older, those 6 years have a bigger influence on.
Yeah.
Right? It's like in terms of my memory, like those 6 years are filling.
Yeah.
Are spilling more into like.
Yeah.
Into more of my life, and I'm seeing how it's playing out. So I could imagine, twice as much as that.
Yeah.
12 years for
Yeah.
you.
Sure.
Any particular memories stand out from being here?
Wow. So many. Man, where to begin?
Age 6.
Age 6. Yeah. Well, I remember when I came. I visited. My parents came and I spent a day visiting when they were looking at houses. I think that's my memory anyway, and so I think it was probably a half day or something like that. But I remember we were supposed to pick another child that you spent the day with, and I picked a girl, and this was like scandalous to the other kids. They were like, I think, because there was kind of this like, that age you're like, girls have cooties or whatever, and so I remember that, and that was funny to me. Like I was like, oh no, am I the weird kid? But then it's like, oh, we're all the weird kids. That's fine. And so that's probably that's literally from before when I came. This was before I enrolled here. But I just have memories, everything from like playing capture the flag sort of over the whole campus, which was really novel and fun, and to really enjoying like Jamie Hichlin's classes for their sort of intellectual stimulation. I remember I was driving by the other day the Millennium Hotel. I don't know if it's still called that, but in Durham. I remember on my birthday one year, I'd sort of caught wind. I think I was a junior or senior. I'd caught wind that Jamie was giving some talk at a conference that I think he'd helped organize, and he said, "Don't come," and I was like, "It's my birthday. I'm coming." So I just went and sat in the back, and he was talking about William Carlos Williams, and I, probably understood 5% of it, but I went up to him afterwards, and he probably called me a rude name or something, but I think he appreciated it, and just that. I don't know. A good friend of mine's, I think it was senior year, we just decided we really liked the movie Mean Girls that was in theaters at the time, and so we made a bunch of announcements about it and said, hey, we're all going to Mean Girls on Thursday night, like in the written announcements for the upper school, and I think like 40 people showed up. There were teachers there, and it was just this random thing that we thought would be funny, but it ended up also being sort of like a community experience away. I mean, I don't think it changed anyone's life or anything, but it was just a nice moment of seeing all these familiar faces at this film in the theater or wherever.
So on a broader scale for this project, one thing I'm looking at is kind of how we evolve over the years, and then also how we stay the same. Can you capture in a nutshell how have you changed over the years, very broadly, and then how have you stayed the same? Is there an element of Pete that has stayed continuous?
Wow. I definitely have more facial hair.
I pictured 6-year-old Pete with that same beard.
Yeah, totally. It's funny you say that though, because one of my classmates in, I think, 8th grade middle school had like a full beard. He was cool. I think he lives in Asheville now. How have I changed? How have I stayed the same?
I would not wish this question upon myself.
No, no, I mean, I think in terms of how I've stayed the same, I think like I would just say a lot of sort of what I'd call like core principles, or ethics, and sort of, I mean, that idea of there being that of God in anybody, or in everybody rather, and that we have to recognize that is something that's really stuck with me. And I think I almost think that goes back a little bit to that question of indecisiveness. Like when someone is so certain that they're right and someone else is wrong, I think it's almost that Quaker idea that like, well, no, it's part of God in this person. Like they may have a point. It makes it harder for me to just discount someone's views, which I think is generally a positive thing, but there is a way to moderate it so it doesn't become debilitating, I hope. So I'd say that's something that's really stayed the same, is just sort of my ethics and my commitment to fellow humans. In terms of change, I don't know. I mean, I guess obviously I have more experiences. I feel like that's an easy out, but I've grown as a journalist and as an artist. I hope. I'm trying to think of something else I could say for that, but it's kind of the best thing I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
So.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Hi. So you mentioned you have these lifelong friends,
Mm-hmm.
and people look at CFS as this bubble, right? And you've totally burst that bubble with what you've done, where you've been. So I'm just very curious, what's it like when you get together with these old friends, and when you do, what is that like? 1 second. Let me just fix something here.
Sure.
What is it like?
No worries. Take your time. I've been there.
Yes. The lighting is changing. Yes.
Sure.
All right. So you'll look at him again when you answer this.
Yeah, of
but
course.
basically, talk about reconnecting with your old friends, if you do, after you've gone to all these different countries, done all these wild things, and yet you all came out of this one little bubble called CFS.
Yeah.
How's that different or weird, or explain that to us? Walk us through that experience.
Sure. So yeah, I made a lot of lifelong friends here, and looked at. For instance, I was just at a wedding of a classmate from CFS, and of course we had several other of our classmates and other people from younger classes and older classes there, and that it kind of feels in a way like we picked up right where we left off in some ways. I definitely keep in contact with a few people that a few of these people who are at this wedding, for instance. We speak on the phone every couple of months or so. I'm not as good, I think, as some people at really keeping in touch, but I've kept in touch. It's just not as, I sometimes feel guilty or wish it was more regular. So yeah, I mean, in fact, I'd say one of my two best friends was a guy I met in first grade here, and we've really kept in touch. But beyond that sort of core group as well, when I moved to Paris, you can do this thing on Facebook where you say like friends who live near Paris, and it'll give you. And a guy popped up who was somebody I probably hadn't seen or spoken to since I graduated. I would say, I mean, I don't know what your experience was, but we, obviously it's such a small school. There's probably like, you have your friends, and then like one or two people that like you don't get on well with, like maybe you kind of don't like them, but then there's kind of like a bunch of people who you're like generally positive about, but like don't have a strong opinion either way. And I'd say he was kind of in that. I definitely didn't have any negative feelings towards him, but I hit him up when I got to Paris and said, hey, I'm living here now, like can we get a beer or coffee or whatever? And he sort of has invited me to play basketball with him. I was actually crashing in his apartment for a week before I came back to the States, and that's I mean, I think we have a genuine friendship, but I also think there's this sort of initially, at least, there was and is this I feel like kind of not an obligation, but just I kind of just want to look out for my fellow like CFSers, and we had another friend pass through Paris for a few days, and I spent some time with her, and then she was going to Barcelona, and actually this friend of mine in Paris was in Barcelona at the time, so I connected the two of them, and they hung out, and it's just like that's a nice feeling of community that I'm not sure will ever go away. Like it, I was at a bar in Chapel Hill about 2-3 years ago, and I had gone there because I heard a guy I went to school here with was bartending, but then another guy sitting down the bar also had gone to CFS like 30-40 years ago. He was quite old, but and so that was just a cool, we all had a good laugh about that, and it's just a nice moment. So
yeah, it's been an amazing part for me to come back here and connect with a dozen or so friends that I grew up with, and going back to that question about what's changed and what's stayed the same, like the staying the same part of that, I see that so strongly.
Yeah.
The essence of that person.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's that 12-year-old essence is still there.
Right.
And not just a little bit, like that's still like the same guy.
Totally.
I sat next to in middle school.
Yeah.
And the community, it's interesting. I like how you could categorize, like there's the clear best friends you had, and
right.
there's like the general community. And I've been surprised myself by how connected I feel to the general community. Not even from my own class, but just like doing these interviews, connecting with people with a huge range of ages, off of mine, and how much I care about these people. And there was one of the 24-year-old that I interviewed. She was 24, and we just did that one interview. I'd never met her before, and she put on Facebook how she really wanted to go to this concert, and she kind of half jokingly was like, "Hey, it's my birthday coming up," and I bought the tickets for her. And
that's awesome.
Sent it, and I was like, but I had this moment like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know this person, but it's just that friend school bond.
Yeah.
And then there are others that I've met where, I find out that they're a lifer, and I just immediately trust them.
Yeah.
And think of them as family.
Sure.
And then there's people from my class, like in that category of the people I wasn't really friends with, just kind of associated with.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it's
yeah. You're like, do you remember this?
Yeah,
like,
the guy you met in up in Paris.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
wasn't a best friend, but all
Right.
of a sudden that bond means so much now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see.
Yeah. It's always funny too when our when mutual friends of ours or friends of his who they'll be like, oh, so how do you two know each other again? And we're like, we went to middle school and high school together back in North Carolina, and people are like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Because we're in Paris, and
Right.
they're from all over. They're Kiwis and Brits and French, and it is funny that people are like, and you guys are friends now, and it's
Yeah, because that wouldn't mean
they're-
so
and
much.
then
It's
and
much
then they
more
go,
diluted.
yeah, and then they kind of say, oh, but so you guys were super good friends in high school, right? And you're like, no, I was 2 years ahead of him, and
Yeah.
I knew who he was, and we hung out, but we're just good friends now. So
Cool.
yeah.
Any advice for me as I approach 40 in about 7 months?
I don't know, man. I'm like, you're ahead of me. I say keep on keeping on. I mean, it seems like you're doing good things. I think passion projects are important.
This is
so.
a huge one for me.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate passion project for me, and it's kind of swept up my life
Yeah.
in awesome ways. So.
That's great.
Cool.
That's awesome.
What's it like coming back here? How's it feel?
Feels good. It's funny. I kind of wonder if there'll ever be a point that I won't, because my parents live 10, 15 minutes from here,
Oh,
if
great.
even that. So so it's not a commitment to come to friend school and in terms of driving, but I keep wondering, like, will there be a day where I think, yeah, I'm not gonna stop by, but I pretty much swing by whenever I'm here. I mean, even feel like I've even just sort of driven through campus, like if it was winter break or something, just to see what's new. Obviously, the campus has gone through a lot of changes, like since I've been here, and but I still love stopping to see and talk with teachers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it's definitely nice.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. For some reason, a story popped into my head that doesn't relate to anything really. But we used to go. Actually, this same group of guys who was at this wedding this weekend. We used to go to Allen and Sons for lunch every Thursday. That was just our thing. Like we would check out, sign out, and you could drive to the place. And that was always fun. We'd always, if we were, we had silly traditions, like if it was somebody's birthday, we'd all wear ties and then like take the guy to lunch and give him presents or whatever. But I remember we caught wind once that a guy, I think the year below us, had eaten lunch there and he didn't have enough money for tip, so he just left. And we went and pulled him out of class, and we just said, listen, man, like if you don't have a tip, that's fine. It's not your fault. But you write a note and you explain to them that you'll be back later with double the tip amount. And he was like, yes, sir. It was funny, like, because that's not,
Awesome.
but it was Bryce's class. And we said, we need to talk to him for a moment. And as though there was some medical emergency from home or something, and we just sort of took him aside. But there was no, it's more just a funny thing to do. And there was a principle to
Oh,
it,
yeah.
but, we weren't doing it to bully the kid or anything like that.
It's like
but,
the friend school version of hazing. Is
yeah,
we-
exactly.
We
We're
make
like-
sure to treat people with respect.
Yeah, yeah. So that was
That's awesome.
that was funny.
Cool. You think anything else?
I think we're good. Actually, the only thing I think about is I'd love to just get some B-roll of you with your camera, just sort
Oh
of
yeah.
Oh sure.
doing some
Yeah.
stuff.
Do you see the worlds
Yeah.
photographically or artistically? Or?
Oh man, I gave an interview once where they led with that, and it was like all my friends made a lot of fun of me for it. But it was yeah, I mean a little bit. When I'm thinking about it, I do.
You
Yeah.
have
I
your
don't-
camera?
Yeah, it's over there. One of them anyway. Probably take the lens. That's super embarrassing. It's the only lens I have a lens cap for, so I always forget that it's on there. But it's a good principal moment for this. You guys know the story of this mural?
I don't.
I know that Amelia. Were you here when Amelia was here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
We keep in touch.
Yeah. So she's. Was the doctor man?
Yeah. So there was a guy named Steve Whitsitt who I initially took photography from. I'm still in touch with him. And then Amelia subbed for him. And then eventually kind of, I think he was doing a lot of freelance work, and so he would have to cancel. And I don't know the whole story, but anyway, I initially met Amelia when she was a sub, and then she ended up being the art photography teacher.
So she did that stuff.
Very cool.
Can you take another picture?
Yeah. Sure. Is that good?
You want to get the walking shot here? So we do.
How about doing it along the creek?
Oh yeah?
We do one shot side by side walking, and then we get the handprint and
Okay, cool.
let you go with green hands.
Sure. Yeah. That person gonna drive with those trash bags in their car? I guess that's one way to do it.
Can you guys start there and walk?
Okay.
through
Sure.
there? Right on the edge.
Side by side, right?
Oh, let me brighten my shot here.
Yeah. Sure. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I just came up with the walking shot. Just like
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
It is pretty dark. Let's just try and do something else too.
You go
Alright,
for it?
go for it. Well, hold on, let's let Carter go. The trash
Oh,
bag's
yeah.
on.
Sure.
And try to walk like this way, meander around the creek a bit.
Because there's this stump here, but
Should we walk?
Yeah,
on the,
this way.
we'll
Can
just
you
go
do
on
that?
that left side.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Alright.
Ready?
And hold on, right. It's really dark. Hold on a second.
Who's brighter up here?
Alright, go for it. Let's try another one.
I was looking down the hole. I was so afraid we trip into the water on filming.
I looked at the camera once. I don't know if that's
Yeah, I don't want you to do that. But
avoid that. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we just go more to the shoulder.
See the bridge?
Yeah. Oh, you want to come up the bridge this way?
Yeah.
So don't look at me and then walk on both sides of me, like make me be
Gotcha.
in the middle.
Cool.
Alright, rolling.
So, go ahead. Oh yeah. That's awesome. Where do you live now?
I'm right by Duke.
Oh, cool.
Alright, that was good.
Cool.
Let's do the.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you grab the chairs too on the right? And these keys belong to one of you.
That's me. Oh wait, no, this is me.
This guy just put the keys here and
Oh.
pointed at you two.
No, can't be Anthony.
That's
but
awesome.
but-
Oh, it's mine. Okay.
Come on, dude.
Well, he pointed at you guys. I didn't know what he was